It's not the NDP's Our London Family Act, it's the National Council of Canadian Muslims who did all of the work from the very beginning to not only put together and research that legislation, but then to advocate very strongly with every party in the legislature. I said on the record many months ago, literally from the first day that we had the vigil in London last June, after the horrific terrorist and hateful act that was perpetrated against the family in London that lost their lives, said from the very beginning that we would move forward with legislation. I've already committed to moving as quickly as I can to pass the Our London Family Act in support of what the National Council of Canadian Muslims has brought forward and done the work on. But here's, I think, the saddest comment in all of this. Despite the fact that every opposition party supports the legislation and Doug Ford and his team say the right things, with a majority in the legislature, they failed. Doug Ford and his team failed to make sure that the Our London Family Act was passed before the election started, and I think that was deeply discouraging and frankly less than what Ontario's Muslim community should expect from a government at Queen's Park. Ontario Liberals will pass that legislation.
I am proud to have been able to work with the National Council of Canadian Muslims to put into legislation the kinds of measures that will help us fight the hatred, the Islamophobia. And I was just at ISNA Canada very recently and once again made the public commitment that we will absolutely pass the Our London Family Act, but just as importantly, we will also then do the things that are in that piece of legislation to start tackling the hatred that exists, the Islamophobic hatred, but as you mentioned, the hatred that exists against all kinds of folks, whether that's anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, anti-indigeneity, anti-Asian racism. I mean, there's just too much hate out there, and we have an obligation and a responsibility, leaders do, to take that on and to listen when community says, we don't want to just hear the words. We want you to take action. That's what our London Family Act is, and it was extremely disappointing that the only party in the legislature that wasn't prepared to move that legislation forward was the governing party, Doug Ford and the Conservatives. It was disappointing, and I think it was disrespectful. We have to start really tackling these pieces. So there's a lot of stuff in the legislation. I can certainly detail some of it if you want me to, but what we know for sure is that we can together, we can tackle all of this hate and start turning things around for Canadian, or for Ontarians rather.
We have a great strategy when it comes to anti-hate of any form. And by the way, we moved it to the Minister of Multiculturalism. We made a dedicated ministry for that. Over on top of the funding before, we've added another $30 million for education and security. And I'll tell you one thing, I think people will understand this. I have zero tolerance for any hate of any type, for any religious background. We live in Ontario. Everyone should be getting along, and honestly, 99% of us, probably even higher, all get along, work together, live beside each other. That's what Ontario is all about, and I'm proud of our record there.